Hello and welcome to the CompTIA Linux Plus Chapter 1 Introduction. My name is John Haskell, go by JT. As we go through this course, you're going to notice that what we're trying to do is prepare you for the certification for CompTIA. Okay, so this test here that we're going to prepare you for is the XKO 005 exam. And there's a lot of crossover between the older 005 exam and the 006 exam. So as we go through there, try to keep up with what are the differences. So, welcome to the world of Linux. In Linux, normally powers most of the things in this world, okay? Whether or not it's websites or cloud servers or Netflix, whatever you have out there, 9 times out of 10, 98% of all web servers are running Linux. Now, Linux is the powerhouse of the internet, and this is why we want to learn about Linux. Now, you see Linux in a lot of Hollywood shows showing a whole bunch of things, but most of the time you're seeing a lot of command line, a lot of text that comes through. And we're not really going to live in the GUI when we're dealing with Linux for this exam. What we're going to be dealing with is what's called command line interface, a CLI, which is the terminal interface. And this is where a lot of the knowledge is gained for you to be prepared for the CompTIA Linux Plus certification. Now, if you're going to be working in a data center in a cloud environment, the Linux Plus is definitely a strong certification to get you in the door. So how does this book work? A lot of the things that you're going to notice throughout this course is, for one, you need to learn the concept. These are just the English that you're going to read through that translates the why and the how of all these different concepts. Now, if you have used Windows operating systems, you're really familiar with the graphical interface, but you're not always going to be familiar with the Linux interface. And Linux is completely different than Windows in many cases. Now, how do we get that to become, well, second nature? We're going to learn by doing the exercise. We're going to do the exercise. So we're going to learn the theory and immediately apply it within a lab. And this is the best way to learn Linux. I like to call it muscle memory. It's a way to build the practical job-ready skill. And so about the exam itself, 005 is a maximum of 90 questions. It's going to be multiple choice and PBQs, which is performance-based questions. Performance-based questions are scenario-based questions that may have multiple inputs for you to complete during the exam. These could be drag and drop. These could be fill out this diagram or read these logs and answer a few questions about it. Performance-based questions take it a step further. Do you understand the material? Not only do you or can you just pick the right answer with multiple choice. Now, you will have 90 minutes to complete this exam. The passing score is a 720 out of 900, a little higher than some of the entry certification exams. Most of the entry-level certification exams are around a 650. But 720 is still giving you a little bit more leeway before we get into the 750 exams, such as the Security Plus. 720 out of 900, it's not a 1-for-1, okay? So I can't tell you, hey, this is an 80%. Well, I can tell you, yeah, that's how the way the math works. In the end, we have to also look at it as, well, do you understand the concepts? And they're going to weigh each question differently. Now, this certification is going to be valid for 3 years. And now you do need 50 CPEs to renew, and that's called continuing education. And I do recommend that you go to the CompTIA website and read about what CPEs are and what counts. Because taking classes like this actually counts as a CPE. Getting a certification that's higher than the one that you have is like a CPE. Attending conferences and user groups are CPEs. Okay, so make sure that you learn what a CPE is so you know how to renew your certification. Now, if you're near the beginning of your journey, this is going to be pretty easy because within 3 years, I'm sure you're going to get another certification to help progress your education itself, and which will also count as your CPEs. Now, the domain itself for the Linux Plus is separated out into 4 domains. The first domain is going to be system management. How well can you use Linux? How well do you maintain it? Can you add and remove users? Can you create storage pools? How well can you traverse yourself through the Linux operating system? That's 32%. 28% of our exam is going to be troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is going to take us a step further. When things go wrong, and trust me, they will go wrong, how well can we troubleshoot the issue and figure out how do I fix the issue? Next, we're going to talk about security. 21% of the exam is based off basic security principles and practices. And they just want you to understand, do you know how to use SE Linux? Do you know how to use AppArmor? These are things that we're going to talk about throughout this course, so that way when you do get the question on the exam, that you'll be able to intelligently answer it. And then lastly, we'll have 19% on scripting, automation, and containers. Now, Linux is used for a lot of web servers out there, and we want things to be automated. And so how do we do that? How do we build an application from the ground up and automate it so that way it takes as least human intervention as possible? Now, domain 1, as I said, is going to be the largest domain. It's going to be talking about the core of Linux administration. As I was saying before, it's going to be Linux fundamentals. We're going to look at the boot process, partitions, learn what an LVM is, logical volume managers. We're going to be looking at processes and services and networking. And then lastly, can we build, install, and manage software? That's going to be on this as well. With layer 2 here with 21% of security, can we look at firewall D and IP tables? Do we know what SSH is? Do we know how to harden our operating system? Can we take scripting and containers and automation and work in a more enterprise environment such as Docker, Bash, and then using Git commands to understand, can I clone code off the internet and utilize it? How do I automate things professionally through tools like Ansible and Terraform? And then lastly, we're going to talk about troubleshooting, which is going to be, well, when we do have issues, what are they, how do we identify them, and how do we fix them? We're going to try to diagnose and resolve any of those types of issues. All right, before I get finished up with this chapter, just know there's going to be a few things I'm going to talk about throughout this exam, but really we're going to gear this towards the CompTIA Linux Plus. The CompTIA Linux Plus is our overall objective, and I want to see every one of you pass the exam. But if you're not using this for the exam itself and you're looking for additional skill sets, that's good as well. But if you're ready for the exam, before the exam, make sure that you know all of the objectives. We just talked about the 4 domains of the 005 exam. Know the objectives. Use them like a checklist. Use them like flashcards. Understand them, love them, study them. And if you come across a topic that you don't understand, make sure that you review it again, so that way when you get it on an exam, you don't get flustered and frustrated as you go through. Make sure that you get your hands-on practice. This is a very muscle memory intensive exam. Please use the VMs that are provided here on wildcyberrange.com to make sure that you can experiment and get really familiar with the tools at hand. Make sure that you get used to the format and timing, so we will give you quizzes throughout this course, and make sure that you go through those quizzes. Don't memorize the questions, but understand why are the answers there, why is the right answer the correct answer, and make sure that you truly do understand the material itself. And then lastly, don't cram. Consistency is going to be key for this exam. And so I normally tell people 8 weeks is a very valid time frame for the CompTIA Linux Plus. And I don't mean 8 weeks of constant study, but 8 weeks of, let me, spend 30 minutes a day, and maybe twice a week I'll spend 2 or 3 hours on it. It's just going to be like going to the gym. Consistency is key. The more you touch something, the more it's become muscle memory, and the better it's going to be for the long term. If you try to cram, you're not going to always understand and remember everything. So please try not to cram through this course, okay? This one is definitely better for something that lets you learn it over time. Now, the day of the exam itself, make sure that you get a very good night's sleep, that you get a good meal. And what I mean about a good meal, don't get something heavy, please. Like, get something a little light, get something that where you're going to be satiated and you're going to be happy to go to the testing center and get this test done. If you're a coffee drinker, go get that cup of coffee. Just make sure it's not too heavy because you don't want to be sleepy throughout your test. Okay. Make sure that you arrive at your testing center early. And the reason for this is it takes a lot of stress off of you if you're there early. I'd rather sit around for 30 minutes waiting for my test than to be late and stressed. Okay. Make sure that you read every question carefully. CompTIA does not have questions that are going to be trick answers, but there are going to be some that, well, there might be multiple right answers. So make sure that you can make sure that you get the best answer for the questions at hand. And the method that I like to do this is I like to read the answers first, then I read the question, and then I read the answers again. If I do it in this order, I find that it helps me get in the right mindset before I even read the question. Make sure you manage your time. You only have 90 minutes for up to a 90 question test. So if you're spending too much time on a question, answer the question and mark it for later. It does have a review section within CompTIA, so you can always come back to the questions at the end of the test. And then my strategy for PBQs, performance-based questions, is I like to do them at the end. They can get you a little more flustered, they're a little more intense. So if you are taking your test and they stick the PBQs at the beginning of the test, what I like to do is I mark them for review and I skip the PBQ and I make sure to revisit them at the end of the test. This way I can get all of my multiple choice questions out of the way and then finish my PBQs at the end of the test where I know how much time I have to work with each PBQ. And then lastly, trust your gut instinct. Please do not start questioning yourselves, because if you do, you will start changing the answers, and a lot of times in the wrong way. All right, so there's a couple ways to actually prepare for this course. I like to use a virtual machine system, and so if you are using wildcyberrange.com, I will provide you with this information already. You will have access to all of your virtual machines. You do not need to have anything extra other than a computer with a web browser, okay? Now, for those who want to go a step further with this, if you have an old laptop or something laying around, then you can install Linux on that laptop. And the first lab in this section is going to have you walk through an installation of a Ubuntu installation. Ubuntu is a very popular Linux distribution, and if you want to use that on your laptop, I would highly recommend it, because everything that you're going to learn through this course is going to be through a Ubuntu setup. Now, with that said, as I said before, you don't need this, but if you want to start getting a little bit more muscle memory, well, the best way is to use the software. Use Ubuntu on a daily basis. Even if you're just using it to open up a web browser and surf the internet, at least you're using Ubuntu to do it, so that way you can start becoming more familiar with the operating system. Now, the six installation course steps is, again, find the hardware. You're going to do your language and keyboard. We're going to do some networks and updates. We're going to install it, pick our time zone, and create a user account. And as I said, in Chapter 1, we're going to go through this step by step, so that way you can get some practice on it if you do want to load maybe that laptop that's been sitting in the closet for how many years. All right, so now you understand what we're trying to do for the Linux Plus itself. We're trying to be familiar with the exam structures and domains. We are going to go through our strategies and preparation. You are going to have our lab environment, because that is 50% of this exam. Please make sure that you have your lab environment ready for you. And if you're using Royal Cyber Range for that, great. We will give you everything you need to be successful. And then lastly, we do need to make sure that we understand the fundamental steps of Linux installation, and you're going to get some of that practice throughout this chapter. All right. If you are taking this course part of an institution, in other words, for a college or high school or anything like that, make sure to use the discussion board at the bottom right corner of your course materials. Here you can ask your teacher or your other classmates questions and have conversations as you study through this course, okay? do highly recommend using the discussion forum. Even if you're taking this as a public course, the public course does have a discussion forum in there. It's not highly used, but if you do want to talk to other students will have the access to that as well. Just be aware it is publicly accessible. In other words, don't put any PII data in there, anything that you don't want the internet to know. Okay? All right, well, I'll see you for the next chapter of the Linux Plus certification exam, and continue studying. Just make sure you take your time. We've got 8 weeks to complete this, 7 weeks of study with 1 week for the exam. So I'll see you for the next lesson. Bye.